Hey friends, I want to get us started. As I said to Brian, I want to get my 90-minute workshop started. And we'll just cram it into the 50 minutes we have remaining, which is all fine and good. So, but let's start with, I'll just offer up a blessing and prayer for this time. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day which you have given to us, and thanks for drawing us together in this place, that we might share in this meal and this food and in this conversation and in this time. And we ask that as we do, your Spirit would just be moving in us and challenging us and inspiring us in the ways that we need so challenged and inspired. Do what is essential for each of us and in each of us this day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So friends, we're going to talk about self-care for a little bit today. And I hope by the end of this even to get you on your way to kind of creating your own self-care plan, if you don't already kind of have one. But we often talk about plans, and sometimes we talk about plans in terms of like, you know, what's your plan for the next year? What's your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan, right? And just curious, anybody have like a 3-year plan? Anybody? That kind of person?
Like for my life?
yeah. I see one hand. Down at the end. Well, I was running the other day, and it just occurred to me, it's like, here's my question for you. What is your 100-year plan? What's your 100-year plan? You don't have one, because you'll be dead. Right? And yes, we're starting the self-care workshop by reflecting on our own mortality. Which, do you still have that? Do you still have that app, Mike? Yeah. Mike has an app that reminds him how many times a day? 5 times a day that he's going to die. Mm-hmm. With little quotes, right? Mm-hmm. So, what's the app called in case any of us want to download it later?
It's called We Croak.
We Croak.
And the logo is like a little frog.
It's very helpful.
That's
So is it like TikTok times limited, get going?
Aaron, you pass this?
It's more like, what are you doing with your time?
So, it's a good, the thing is, the reason to start there is just perspective, right? Bring some perspective. That from dust we have come, to dust we will return. And if we can get a little bit of perspective, often we can begin to ask ourselves, why are we not caring for ourselves better? If there is a kind of limited space in our engagement in this world, often all the stress that we put ourselves under is really oftentimes self-imposed, or we're not having the right kind of perspective on what's happening. And of course, self-care gets low on the priority list instead of being the priority. And for folks gathered at this table, how it's important for everybody to have self-care, but how important it is for us who then seek to care for others. And if we're not caring for ourselves well, we're essentially not going to be caring for others well. We can fake it for a while. We can fake it, but it eventually catches up to us. So it's just real important. And one of the best things I ever did for my own personal self-care was take a sabbatical. And I took a 4-month sabbatical back in the summer of 2014, and I still owe Mike many beers for all that he did as he guided hot metal in that time while I was away. And so these are just 2 pictures that I keep in my office from that sabbatical space. So here's my family as we're hanging out at Devil's Tower as we took a 3-week trip out west. But my favorite photo is this one. This is me in a hot spring in a river in Yellowstone Park. And when I went on the sabbatical, I created a separate Gmail account, and I called it sabbaticaljeff@gmail.com. I still have that account. But a couple of Ben's friends jokingly during that time, who were on the soccer team with him, started calling me Sabbatical Jeff. And I love Sabbatical Jeff. Sabbatical Jeff is a great guy. And so I try to hold on to as I came back out of that space, it was a reorienting space for my own self-care and realizing I needed to hold on to more of that like spirit of sabbatical Jeff, which was about caring really more deeply for myself. And on that sabbatical, I discovered one other thing, or didn't discover, but the other thing I did in that sabbatical was there was only one book of the Bible that I read while I was on sabbatical. And I really feel it's probably the best self-care book in the Bible, and that's Ecclesiastes. Like, for all the reasons I was just drawn to read, does this mean anything? I was drawn into that space of engaging with Ecclesiastes. And I really think it offers some good thoughts, perspectives on why we should care for ourselves. And so I offer this first scripture. This is my theological case for self-care. It is Ecclesiastes 6, 13 to 18, which says, "Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what God has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes." And I love this scripture, and it was really significant for me in that sabbatical space. And one of the things that I discovered as I unpacked the scripture, and all of you probably know this to some degree, is that the word for meaningless that is throughout Ecclesiastes in Hebrew is hevel. And actually, meaningless is not a great translation of it. It's kind of a poor translation for the depth of what it means. Other things it can mean, a better translation is vanity. Vanity, vanity, all things are vanity. And so that puts a whole different kind of spin on it, and makes us, that makes me kind of think how we get caught up in ourselves, in our own space, and our own worries. Another translation of it would be absurd. Absurd, absurd. All things are absurd. All we have to do is scroll through our news feed to realize the truth of that. That also puts a different spin on it. But the best translation is actually smoke, vapor, or breath, which puts an entirely different spin on it. Everything is smoke, everything is vapor, everything is breath. So it's not just saying life is meaningless, it's actually saying something much more. It's saying there is brevity and there's a fleeting nature to this life, that it's out of our control, and that all of our frantic kind of activity can't change. And so what do we do in the midst of that? The scripture says, well, consider what God has done. And I think as we look at some of these things here, there are actually obstacles to self-care that it's referring to. Who can straighten what God has made crooked? And I always kind of I look at this more like what I have made crooked. That there are things in my life that are out of line, that aren't straight, or sometimes I feel like I've done that, or sometimes that has come to me. That just that's the nature of life, that oftentimes there are crooked parts. And sometimes we get stuck in those crooked parts. We get stuck thinking about them. We either have a lot of regret about it. There's things that are heavy on us, and we're stuck in that crooked part and not caring for ourselves well in the midst of it. But then the other thing it says, but there are also good times, there are bad times, and God has created one as well as the other. And you know what? We can't know our future. And I think that's the other thing, an obstacle to our self-care, is when we get too worked up or worried about what is our future? what are all those, like, what's that 3-year plan, that 5-year plan, that big, thing? And it's okay to have those, but I think we need to hold more loosely to what they may be, because oftentimes those plans go in different directions. So I think those are like obstacles to self-care, that like fear or the regrets of the past, or the things that weigh heavy upon us from our past, or the fear that we have of the future. And when we're living in like regret of the past or fear of the future, what we miss out on is like today. And that's where self-care begins, is being present like in today. And Mother Teresa has a great quote. It says, "Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is yet to be, all we have is today. So let us begin." And so that's where our self-care begins, is today. And what is our plan for ourselves, for our care of ourselves, for our day? Since our time is hevel, is breath, is brief, we need to think about how we want to spend it well. And finally, the last thing I want to pull out of this scripture is the idea of balance. Like, self-care is so much about finding a good balance, finding the right rhythm for our life. And I love this part of the scripture. It says, hey, don't be overly righteous, right? Don't spend 20 hours working on your sermon. That's not going to improve it. If you worked hard and like pastoral care has consumed a lot of your week and you only have a couple hours to get, that's going to be fine. It's going to be enough, right? But then also, like, look, don't be too wicked. It says, do not be over wicked. I like the fact that it doesn't say don't not be wicked at all.
I like the freedom to be a little wicked.
Yeah, a little wicked. That's right.
That's part of my self-care plan.
Yes, absolutely. But you also probably shouldn't be drinking whiskey every night, right? Like, if your self-care plan devolves into like another shitty day, oh God, where's the whiskey? Where's the whatever? This speaks to like a balance. It says, it's good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Like, there's a balance that we're called to. We're called to work, and we're called to pursue, like, to put together a good sermon. But we're also called to like rest and know when to like let that go. That it's good enough. And finally, just like Ecclesiastes speaks to like a time for everything. Right, the whole chapter 3 of a time to be born, time to die, a time to plant, time to pluck up, time to kill, time to heal, all the things. Time to love, time to hate, time for war, time for peace. And I would say, like, in every season, there's like a time for our care, to care for ourselves in the midst of whatever season it is that we happen to be in. So what I want us to do is like examine, you're going to take some time examining your own just current self-care practices. And we're going to look at 4 areas: spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental. And I'm not going to totally define what those are exactly for you. They may kind of have different connotations for each person. But those are 4 good areas to look at as we consider how we're caring for ourselves. And who I want to hold up as our model, yes, anybody guess?
Jesus!
Yes! Get it, you get the
Mike
sticker.
did really well in Sunday school.
Get the Sunday school
I did.
Right, and I just want to look briefly at like how Jesus, his self-care around his own spirituality. I'm not going to unpack like all 4 areas. I'm not even sure if you can do that or find that in the Bible. But like spiritually speaking, we can definitely see how Jesus took some care of himself. And I'm just going to go through a few scriptures here. The first being from Mark, where in the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. Now, for me, part of my spiritual self-care for the past 5 or 6 years has been trying to be very intentional about that space of holding that prayer space, or that contemplative space, as I've been exploring contemplative prayer and silence and stillness in the mornings. And like that's why have sounding bell will travel. This is like part of my self-care. That sound like it immediately starts to soothe my soul, just because this has been part of like my rhythm, part of my practice is to like have some scripture, have some spiritual reading, and then like usher in some silence. And Jesus models this, and your spiritual care doesn't have to necessarily be modeled around having the sounding bowl and being silent. Maybe that's part of it. But what I noticed throughout all of Luke is Jesus modeling this getting away to be. However that might look for you, getting away to be in the presence of the divine. So just listen to these scriptures from Luke. Luke chapter 4, Jesus was led into the wilderness for 40 days. Also chapter 4, at daybreak he departed and went into a deserted place. Luke chapter 5, but he would withdraw to the deserted place to pray. Luke chapter 6, now during those days he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer before God. Luke chapter 9, once when Jesus was praying alone. Luke 11, he was praying in a certain place. Luke 22, he came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives. He then withdrew from them and prayed. All those spaces where Jesus was creating space to be. And I love the verse where it says, that last one, Luke 22, as was his custom. It was clear he had a habit of setting time apart for his spiritual self-care. And if you look more closely at what surrounds those times where he was getting apart, it didn't matter what the demands of the day were upon him. Because he was taking time before he was picking the disciples, before he was heading out on his mission, to preach, to heal, and before facing his own death. It wasn't like Jesus was like, well, I really don't got a lot of time today. I know I'm going to have to be healing people all day long. I'm just going to skip my spiritual practice today. You know, he intentionally pressed into it more in those spaces. So there was something there, obviously, that was life-giving, life-sustaining, life-supporting. So that custom, as was his custom. And then the other verse I like where it says he was praying in a certain place. Like, clearly he would go out and kind of create his own space, his own place. So part of what I want you to think about today is, what is your custom and where is your certain place around these different areas of self-care? What is your custom? What's your habit? What do you want to develop as your custom? And where are those spaces or those places where that can happen? And so that's what I want you to reflect on a little bit right now. I want to take just, let me give you like 5 minutes since we're on a little time crunch here. And I want you to briefly do this self-care personal evaluation. This one right here, you can pull that up, okay? And on the front here is just think about what your custom in certain places is, spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And just list one. Just list one thing that you do for each of those areas that you consider good care for yourself. And then just on a kind of ranking, how are you caring for yourself, 1 to 10, list that for those same areas. And then last one to consider, what are the warning signs that like pop up in you when you're not caring well for yourself? The other, and if you need some help on warning signs, this page right here on the back has stress warning signs and symptoms. Like one for me, I know that I'm not caring well for myself when like my irritability is up there. When I have that short fuse, like fits of rage, just take over, like stupid stuff, right? Some just like makes me go off that really shouldn't. So just do that front page. Take a few minutes and reflect on those things.
Does anybody have an extra pen?
I do.
Whoa.
Anybody else like that?
Yeah. You guys are weird.
or you can continue to ponder that for a minute, but I'm going to move us on to one other area I want you to reflect upon in your own self-care. And that is, if you turn that page over, the other thing I want you to think about is to think about how, like, your care is not just about you. Often we think about self-care, it's kind of like we're in a silo. And what do I need to do to care for myself, which is true. But, like, how does our care of ourselves intersect with others in our life? And the question I ask is, who is your care team? So, what I mean by your care team are the people that care for you and that you need to spend time with to be healthy. So that could be obviously your spouse or your partner, close friends, family members, children. It could be your therapist, your spiritual director. It could be communities maybe you're part of, whether it's maybe you're part of a running club or a book club or a prayer group, etc. Who are the people that you need to be interacting with in your life as part of your care? Notice, I do not have congregation written down here. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a whole different thing. This is about your self-care and making sure that you're caring for these very important relationships, because obviously how these relationships are going are impacting your self-care. You could be taking all the time to be spiritual in the world, but if you're not, like, intentionally spending time with your spouse or your kids, and those relationships are fractured, that impacts who you are and how you are. So just take another couple minutes to reflect on that, to maybe just start to list your team members and intentional time spent. You don't necessarily have to do that like 1 hour a day or whatever, but intentional time spent. Like, some people were always around, like our family members. But, like, are you intentionally spending time with your spouse or partner in a way that's nourishing your relationship? That's the kind of time I'm talking about. Are you how often does that running group meet? No, once a month I'm doing that. Or that's what I mean by intentional time. And then again, just for yourself, just kind of in your mind, like, well, where is that relationship right now in terms of time spent and quality of? And you can rank it if you desire. But at least begin the process of thinking about your team members and the time and the quality of that time that you're spending with them. I'm just going to give you like a few minutes to do that. just because of time factor, I'm gonna keep us moving. But before I kind of step into the next thing, I was gonna have us do like a little more intentional sharing around this in pairs, but we don't really have time for that. But is anybody willing to share just a little, like, anything you noticed? Was there anything in particular as you did that little self-evaluation or reflection, anything that stood out to you, either good, bad, or otherwise? Yeah.
I added my high school, some of my high school girlfriends, and then college friends. And when I look at the title, people that care for you and that you need to spend time with to be healthy, or you could say that give you joy, and like describing them that way just it kind of underscores their importance. You know, I tend to think of them as high school friends or college friends, but when I read that, you know, that care for you and that you need to spend time with to be healthy, it kind of elevates it.
Yeah.
I think your comment, Jeff, about intentional time versus just time is important. Like I've noticed, especially with my kids, with my wife it's easier, but with my kids it's really important that time be intentional. And like things like the fact my son can ride in the front seat of the car. It's made a huge difference. But am I taking advantage of that time, or are we just sitting there, you know, droning off?
I think similarly, the people that I see most often, I feel where I rank the quality of the time I spent together lower.
Yeah.
Because it's not always intentional, like we're in the same space, but we're not always in the same space. And so the people that I see less frequently, like there's an effort that I put into making that happen, so the quality of that time seems to be better. It's not good though.
But I think something we're all familiar with.
I see a disconnect between like the thoughts of myself and what is actually happening. You know, like I can think of the plan and think like I need to take care of myself in these ways, but then like the quality of that is much different on account of just like the pace of life and the schedule of life.
I thought it was helpful that that you gave us an outline of the different aspects of self-care. I think it's helpful. It provides a more holistic view of self-care than I think what we maybe normally assume. And I think there are certainly overlaps in those areas.
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful and it helps you recognize that some of the things that you do, actually, those are self-care issues that maybe I didn't think of them that way before.
Yeah.
I was noticing that too, because I think like culturally, like a lot of the conversation around self-care is usually around like treating yourself or just like checking out, which are valuable things to do. But like it's more than that, because it can't be just that.
Yeah.
I think making this list for me was helpful in that it showed me that like self-care, the way we understand it, is very individualistic.
Yeah.
And that we need to do self-care. This is something I also need to do for myself, but that I need to allow myself to be cared for by these people in that time.
Right. Yeah. Great, thank you. So what I want to do, I just want to share a couple more like self-care concepts, and then give you a few minutes to begin to like think about your own kind of self-care plan. So here are my concepts. Know thyself, pay attention, boundaries, make a plan, and treat yourself. But starting with the know thyself, I think it's just so important to understand who we are, to understand how we need to care for ourselves, right? And I think some of the most some of the most significant things that have happened in the course of my ministry were moments of recognizing who I was on a deeper level and how that was impacting my ministry and impacting who I was as a person. And there are all kinds of ways you can get to know yourself. There's Strength Finder, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, 1,000 more. But for me, those three were particularly important. When I did Strength Finders for the first time, and my number one strength was empathy. And it came up in the coffee shop, and I was like, oh, fuck. Use my language. But I'm just trying to get the visceral reaction of I don't want that to be my strength. I want to be an activator, I think that's Vera, or an inspirer, an empathy. You get to be empathetic. But self-reflection, think about that. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean then? What does that mean for me as a pastor? What does it mean for me to take care of myself? And then, Myers-Briggs, I'm an introvert. I need my recharge time. Sunday afternoons, when I was pastoring, was nap time. It was I'm so exhausted from being with everybody now it's do whatever I want time. It's kind of glorious. But anyways, I digress. And then the Enneagram, I'm a type 2. That's the helper. That's the giver. And I have to understand that type 2 Enneagrams don't always receive help well, and I need to accept people giving to me and let them care for me and be open to letting them know I need cared for. Because type 2 tends to be no, I don't need anything. I don't need anything. Please, somebody notice me. So these are all very important things to understanding who I am and how I need to care for myself and let others care for me. So know thyself. Pay attention. I'm just going to use good old Saint Ignatius and his consolations and desolations. This whole concept of paying attention to what's happening in all these different areas of your life. What is bringing you joy? What feeds your soul? What are those consolations? And where are those places of desolation? Where are things blowing up or not going as well? And not desolations are part of life. It's not always because we're not caring for ourselves well. The desolation, a sense of desolation is there. But paying close attention to what's happening, even in our bodies. We're kind of disconnected from our bodies as Protestants. And pay attention, what's going on in your body, when you're feeling sick, when you're feeling run down, oftentimes that's a result of other things going on, or if you got all the tension up in the shoulders, or anywhere, it makes sense to try to pay attention to our body. So just pay attention. What are your consolations? What are your desolations? And then boundaries, right? That's really important. And the only two places I really thought of boundaries are super important is time and relationships. I'm sure there's other boundaries need to be created, but time and relationships seem really critical. What are the boundaries with the people you are ministering to? What do those look like? I remember early in the hot metal early years, a space where Carolyn and I realized all of our relational space was now invested in hot metal. And we had been ignoring other primary relationships that had been important to us for years. But it's we got to do this. We're we're relational. We're all the things. And then you realize that's not healthy. That's actually not healthy. We need space outside this to be a couple. And to not have this kind of all the things that come with being the pastor and married to the pastor of a community. And then another the moment when somebody came to my door at 10 o'clock at night and rang the bell, and this was still very early on, my kids were young, and he was standing out there asking for money, for gas, and he'd done it before, and it was weird, and it felt unsafe. I was oh, I need a better boundary. This is not something I can engage in. We're not on call 24/7. No. We are not. That's not our role. That's not our gig. So what are your boundaries? Another thing to think about. And also, like, I don't, often we're like, oh, like, we look at all these things we want to do, and often, like, time is the problem, or at least we think time is the problem. I don't think time is the problem. I think our priorities are often what's the problem. Yes, there are going to be certain demands that are upon us because of our jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Most of us that are in this ministry world, though, there is the kind of blessing that we get more space to create our own schedule, which is blessing and curse. As I see my wife right now at ECS, and she's like pressed into this new role as first grade math teacher, and ECS has expanded, and they've put more on the teachers while taking more teachers out of the classroom. And the funny thing was yesterday after school they talked about self-care. And she came out, I was like, man, they're not setting you up well for self-care. Like the system is not. So I get like sometimes that's a thing. That's a real thing. You gotta like navigate that. But we also have, I feel, we still control our schedule. We still can say no more often than we do. And how can we create margins? We need margins. We've kind of pushed everything out so there's like no margins. And where can you create the margins? So those are just the boundary spaces I think we need to be aware of. And just one last thing, like how we relate to time. I've been trying to switch my understanding about my relationship with time. Because I will see like an empty day, like a day with no like calls or meetings or anything, and think, damn, this is the day I'm getting it all done. On my to-doist list, I'm going to knock it out. I'm going to get it all done. That has never happened. As many times as I've been in that scenario, something else like comes up or something takes a lot longer than I anticipated. And so I've been trying to think in terms of more, instead of saying like, I'm getting this thing done in the next 2 hours. I've been trying to think like, okay, I'm devoting the next 2 hours to this thing. And if it's done in that time, great. If it's not, I'm going to have to find another little block of time. So one thing I've done, I don't do this every day, but when I know there's certain days, like there's a lot happening, a lot I'm trying to manage, at the beginning of the day, I'll just write out like hour to hour what I'm doing. I say like, okay, I'm going to do emails for like an hour and a half, hard stop at 9:30, and then I'm working on this thing, and then I'm doing this thing, and then I'm meeting with this person. And of course, it's got to be fluidity. I hold loosely to it. Sometimes things bleed into the others. But it's helpful for me to be like, oh, I said I'm going to be done with emails. I just need to be done with emails. Because that's bottomless pit.
There will always be more.
Yeah, because as soon as you like answer 3, you get like 2 answers back, and now you need more answers. So just good thing about how you create those boundaries in your space around time. And then make a plan. We're going to talk about that in 1 second. But then the treat yourself. There's one last Ecclesiastes passage that I want to read. Ecclesiastes 9, and this is the Eugene Peterson's The Message version. It says this: seize life, eat bread with gusto, drink wine with robust heart. Oh yes, God takes pleasure in your pleasure. Dress festively every morning. Don't skimp on colors and scarves. Relish life each and every day of your precious life, or precarious life, and precious. Each day is God's gift. It's all you get in exchange for the hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each one. Whatever turns up, grab it and do it, and heartily. This is your last and only chance at it, for there's neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you're most certainly headed.
Sounds like you're out.
Yeah. But I think oftentimes we'll feel guilty about taking space for ourselves. Or we won't treat ourselves well because we think it's like something we shouldn't do as good Christians. Right? So as I finished up my time at Hot Metal, I got the Hot Metal staff bonus that fortunately I had set up the year before when Mike left. So we had a little system, not like a ton of money, but some money, a significant bit, and I got 2 kids in college, right? Easily could have just tossed that away. But what I did is I invested it in a pair of astronomical binoculars that like are super sweet and kind of pricey. But like that's something that feeds my soul is astronomy. And like I got a little tiny telescope and I got a pair of binoculars, but I've been like looking at these for a while and I thought, man, it'd be sweet to have those. And so now I got them. Yeah. And I'm like super excited about it. Now, Pittsburgh is way too cloudy most of the time, so I haven't even gotten to use them yet. But soon, it's coming. So there are spaces like we can treat yourself, allow yourself to like press into that, to receive the goodness of whatever it is that God wants to give you. And then so the last thing is like, this really doesn't happen unless we're kind of intentional about it. It doesn't happen unless we have some sort of plan that we're trying to engage in. So the last thing I want you to do is to begin to think about your plan. And so here, this is like make a self-care plan. And you can use this as a template, or you can create your own template, whatever will work for you. But think about these 4 areas, and how are you caring for yourself? Either daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. What's your custom? Where are your places for care? And I just gave you a little outline of my self-care plan. You'll notice it's not like every box is filled. That's not the thing. It's not like fill it all up so you have too much to do, more to do. I'm not trying to say there's more you need to do in life, but just to get you thinking. And because I have all these things listed here, but trust me, I don't get to them all the time. They don't always happen, but they're things that I know feed my soul and are important. And so some of them happen more regularly than others, like retreats and getaways with my wife. So what are you laughing at, Mary?
No, I'm reading in your mental area. You said read books unrelated to work or spirituality. It's like, oh,
yes.
That's hard.
Yeah. I just need my fictional book at night, as I'm going to bed. I need that kind of space. And some of these bleed into the other areas, right? Some of the things I'm doing spiritually are also helping me mentally, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing, the last thing I'm going to say in terms of something that's helped me, and again, for us that have to create our own space, our own hours, our own schedule, is that I track the number of hours I work. And I would highly encourage you all to do the same. There's a great app, Toggl, Toggl, and it was really helpful when I was juggling 2 jobs, which I know some of us here are, to know how many hours did I put in here this week? How many hours did I put in there that week? And it does 2 things, right? One, you can appreciate when you get to the end of your hours for the week, sometimes it's time to call it a week. I'm done. Or if you're working, sometimes you got events or whatever. If you work more hours one week, work less hours the next week. Yes. Yeah, but also it helps when we're underserving an area. For I'm really not putting in the time I've covenanted to put into this. So it holds us in accountability, and I think it is an important practice. So it is 1 o'clock now, but I would if it's okay for us to take another 5 minutes for you to begin to think about this. Begin to just put some rough outlines down. I stole this from somebody else. This physical care, this is just ideas. These are just thoughts. Some things you can. I certainly don't have an exhaustive list of things, but this might inspire you to think of other things you want to put into your self-care plan. And the last thing, underneath that Ecclesiastes passage are these self-care tools, which are really things I use. So there's a lot more self-care tools But if you're interested in like learning more about yourself, the Enneagram Institute is a great spot to go. You can take the test there. You can start to learn about the Enneagram if you don't know about that. These are a bunch of different apps that I use. Again, Toggle is there, track my hours. Todoist is important as an organizer for me. My Fitness Pal to track eating. Actually, I don't do that one. There's just like, and some books. If you want some books to help you get a little centered, like to get centered, Out of Solitude by Henry Nouwen and A Testament of Devotion. And these two books on simplicity, one by Richard Rohr, one by Richard Foster. Those are all good, like kind of centering spaces to help you maybe encourage you to press into your spirituality a little bit more. And then more books around prayer and around getting to know yourself. And at the bottom, very important, some therapist references. That was an important part of my care team for a long time, and my therapist retired like 5 years ago, but I still have coffee with them like every 3 months. Vera hooked me up. I remember, it was walking into an NWC meeting, I think, and I was just like fried, and I was like, my life, this is over, I can't do this. And Vera's like, how about a counselor? Here's a number. And so that was an important space for me. So just take a few minutes and begin to reflect or jot down some notes around your self-care plan.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Absolutely. Here's all of this. Well, I invite you to continue to ponder your self-care plan today or over the course of the rest of this week. And then also I invite you then to share it with somebody. Once you kind of feel like you got in a space of like, oh, these are some of the things that need to happen. Not as like strict accountability or anything, but just to invite somebody else into that space of letting them know what you need, and inviting them to help care for you as well. So it wouldn't be a self-care seminar unless I sound the sounding bowl. So I invite you to just kind of put everything down and to root yourself to the ground, and for a couple minutes we'll just be in silence together. But first I'm going to read this poem from Hafiz, Sufi mystic, and it is entitled Tripping Over Joy. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game of God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move, that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. Gracious God, we are grateful for your presence here with us and within us, and invite your Spirit to lead us into the rest of our day, that your peace might go with us and guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.